The state and the Commonwealth governments, in fact, fund very little infrastructure on these islands. Redland City Council can only do as much as they can and take into account their rate income and so forth. So things like road, wastewater, sewage and other water access facilities such as jetties and so forth are severely neglected. Most of our island roads are still unsealed, even though the best intentions and using new methodologies the council have come up with, they still don't have the resources to seal the road fast enough to meet the island's demands, let alone into the future of our population grows. Bicycle use is becoming increasingly common, but few dedicated cycles or shared pathways exist. Furthermore, what roads and paths we do have are carrying mobility vehicles used by our elderly population, and they're restricted the use of bicycles and so forth. There's some quite unique traffic problems on these islands. The question we ask is, if you were elected, how would you address the infrastructure needs of these islands? Please answer.
I think the council could put more into the area. I think they could put more. They seem to spend an awful lot on the mainland and put more money into different industries, into roads. You can go through the mainlands. There's not a road there. Very rarely that's not sealed. So why should you have to wait another 5 years or 10 years for your roads to be sealed? I believe that this should be done. I'd also believe that with the state government, they can put more into this. They can do a little bit more for the area. I believe that the islands have been ignored for far too long, and this requires urgent help. You need to have more here. And this would be something that I would obviously have to look into government of what we have available and what we can do. And again, this has to be something that we could look into of what people want in the area. It's not something that I don't know the islands that very well, even though I've lived here for 39 years. I don't know what you need and what's urgently required. I know one of the things is, as I said earlier, is that the place needs a day clinic, it needs a day hospital to help the elderly people here. They shouldn't have to travel to the mainland. Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
I think one thing that's important when it comes to infrastructure and building things, when you have 3 levels of government, and we've all seen it where they blame each other, is to build relationships within those 3 levels of government and work collectively together within the community that you're trying to build things for. So one thing that I've learned, if anything, about politics is, for me, it's fundamentally about building relationships and being able to work collectively with local government, state government and federal government will enable at least a very good starting point to help build the infrastructure that the islands need. So what are we actually talking about when we're talking about infrastructure? We absolutely need more parking for islanders at Wyman Creek, and the question of the bridge comes into infrastructure as well. So that connectivity, that road connectivity to the islands, whether it's to Russell Island or whether it's to Macleay Island, that infrastructure is a crucial question for the future of the island. So there's a lot of different options that we can look at. One is the possibility of Panican Island and a short haul barge across here that could be a feasible option as well. But with the building of infrastructure, I think what we need to do is to build on the capacity of SMBI Forum and look at perhaps a more profound, if you like, organisation like a statutory authority, something that's similar in in its scope to what's happening on Kangaroo Island. So I had a chance to have a look at what's happening there, and that would really, I think, enable islanders to be more the masters of your own destiny. And I think the last thing you need is, someone like me, a mainlander, coming over here and telling you, what you need. My job would be to assist you getting what you need, to facilitate that, to leverage off the relationships that I've built in state, federal and local government, and help your community build with my skills.
Again, I make a comment that when you talk about infrastructure in East of the Islands, with the same problem that exists on the mainland. Australians have got two choices. Either they increase revenue from taxes or other income earning opportunities, or else they go more into debt. Now, debt's had a dirty word of late. It's a bad thing. But ask most people if they've got debt. They have, they've got a mortgage, or they've got a business. You can't get anywhere really without debt. No public company can operate without debt. Now, there's a bit of an inequity, isn't it? If you don't have debt and then you put the impost on taxes, it means the current generation is actually paying for the future benefits that accrue from the building of that infrastructure. So debt is actually a more equitable way of sharing costs. So in other words, current generation pay a bit, next generation pay their share, and so on and so forth. And over 30 or 50 years, the debt gets fully paid. Now, there's no good having a discussion about where the infrastructure is coming from unless we actually talk about how it's funded. Now, I think it's a disgrace that the islands have such poor roads from a point of view, not bitumen sealed. It's sort of like going right to back 30 or 40 years. I can remember when West Mount Cotton Road, for instance, was unsealed. Actually, it was a good thing because it stopped a lot of hoons going on, really, like messing their cars up. But at the end of the day, it comes down to federal and state governments, and to a lesser extent local governments, to actually re-evaluate the funding needs. Because the only way you're going to get infrastructure on these islands, because you're ranked with everyone else in Queensland, and across Australia for that matter, talking about federal money, is you're going to rank down the bottom unless you've got a very active local member who can push you up the batting order. But we all know that the problem with local governments is that they're limited. The state government is limited in its revenue. So a fundamental change has got to happen. We've got to take a longer term view, and as I said, the future of Australia depends on increased infrastructure, particularly public transport, which we haven't got, and you haven't mains for sewer or water. Now, I don't think you need water. You can catch water off the roofs and whatever. But there is certainly a whole bunch of issues that are faced across Australia. They're not just limited to the problems here. Thanks.
To the preamble to the question, I took that as infrastructure for the islands here. I took that as infrastructure for your roads on the islands. I took that as infrastructure for your lighting, your footpaths, your water, not necessarily anywhere else. Some of you may be well familiar with the Russell Island Bridge Supporters Group and their Facebook page. Some of the people on there have done some very good analysis of the rateable values of properties on the southern Moreton Bay Islands. Because the sort of infrastructure we're talking about when we're talking about your local roads, your local footpaths, your local lighting, is council-funded infrastructure. Yes, Redland City Council is a large council, but Russell Island has the highest number of rateable value properties across all suburbs in the Redland City. Is there an equitable distribution of that? One could perceive that maybe there isn't. Is there a state impost on how councils should distribute their funding across their various suburbs? Not to the best of my belief and knowledge, but I haven't researched that fully. I haven't gone down to legislation. It would seem to me that if places like Raby Bay and their Progress Association can come to arrangements with Redland City Council to get a more equitable distribution of their rates back to their suburb, then surely there ought to be a role for the Southern Moreton Bay Island Forum to negotiate similarly with the Redland City Council for the Southern Moreton Bay Islands. The federal government National Stronger Regions Fund, which was the initiative of which Mr Andrew Lanning spoke last October, is a fund, a series of grants available from the federal government that local council can apply for. It has to be matched dollar for dollar with local council money or private entity money, and it is to fund infrastructure projects. So surely there is a good link there for the SMBI Forum and for the council to work together to identify the priority infrastructure and to put an application in for one of those grants. Those grants could be up to 10 million. If council are co-funding on a dollar-for-dollar basis, that's $20 million. That's a lot of infrastructure. That's a lot of road seeding that Mark Edwards could get happening across the islands. And he told us at the last SMBI Forum meeting that there's an agenda in place for that over the next 2 years. Well, that national fund is available till 2019. Let's do something about getting some of that money.